Hello, it's story time with Kathy again, and now it's time for the conclusion of A Diplomat's Daughter. When we left off, Linda had been rescued from being kidnapped and had fallen asleep. I woke hours later to the scent of sweet pipe tobacco and coffee and the mumblings of a nearby radio. My clothes had been cleaned and were stacked on a chair in the corner. I dressed quickly and freshened up in the bathroom and walked into the living room where I found Frank sitting comfortably in a burgundy upholstered wing-back chair. He put down his pipe, turned off the radio, and smiled as I sat on the couch near him. "Good afternoon," he said calmly. "How are you feeling?" "I'm fine, I think," I responded. "Would you like something to drink or anything?" he continued. "The housekeeper is here and will fix you something if you'd like." "I guess I'd like to use the phone first," I answered shakily. "I should call my husband." "Sure," he said. "There's actually a phone on the table in your bedroom if you'd like some privacy." I located the phone and dialed our home number nervously. I hoped George wasn't still mad at me. After numerous ringtones, the answering machine came on and I left a message for him to call me at the number labeled on the phone. When I returned to the living room, Frank stood up and said, "Come on, let's go to the kitchen and have Madame Lisson fix you something. Then we can talk about the plans to get you home." "No," I said softly, as I sat on the couch quickly and waves of despair overcame me. "I think I need more than a meal and a quick trip home. I was just kidnapped and almost killed." Frank sat down carefully in his chair. "I'm not going anywhere until I get some answers." Frank closed his pale blue eyes and leaned forward as he rubbed his forehead. His eyebrows were furrowed and tense as he dropped his hands and stared ahead blankly. He finally said in a deep, serious tone, "Linda, if I tell you why this happened to you, your life will be in danger. But the best thing you can do now is return home and forget about it." "No," I said sternly. "I am scared now. Nothing you can say can make that worse. I've lived most of my life wondering what happened to Jim and wondering what really happened to my father. Now I attempt to get some answers and look what happens. I deserve an explanation and I want you to tell me now." Frank was silent. He leaned back in his chair, retrieved his pipe from the nearby table, and inhaled slowly several times while lighting it. "Okay, maybe you're right," he finally said, as a thin trail of smoke curved gently above him. He then crossed his legs, looked me straight in the eyes, and began. "Have you ever heard of the Belgian Congo? Today it is called the Democratic Republic of the Congo." "Yes, of course," I replied. "Good. Actually, I better start from the beginning," he continued. "You know your father was a naval attaché, of course. Well, I was the army attaché, and we collected intelligence on Russian arms control in those days. A Russian defector turned himself in one day in order to escape prosecution for having a homosexual relationship with another member of the Russian army. The defector was part of a Russian arms supply unit, and he had valuable information to trade for our protection." Frank ran his rugged fingers through his short silver military haircut and continued. "He told us that Russian arms and explosives were being secretly sold to a Belgian Congo warlord who was planning to use them in attacks against Belgians in an attempt to gain control of diamond mines in the Congo. Belgium actually had a long history of exploiting these mines and giving nothing back to the Congolese in return. The Russians supplied us with details on where and when the armed drops were made, and your father and I passed this information to agents who in turn intervened during the exchange." I swallowed hard as the gravity of the situation became clear. "The Russian was soon captured by the Africans, though, and in an attempt to save his life, he gave them our names." He paused. "They killed the Russian and your father, but my family was lucky enough to relocate and create new identities before they could find us." "Did my mother know anything about this?" I asked. "Not as far as I know," he answered. "Keeping this secret was imperative to everyone's safety." "So that's why I never heard from Jim again," I said softly. It's been so many years now, though. I don't understand why they are still trying to kill you. Well, the battle over the mines has been an ongoing struggle that still goes on today, he continued. After my wife passed away and the boys were grown, I requested to be assigned back here at the embassy. I officially retired about 5 years ago, but unofficially, I'm a consultant, a liaison, a researcher, or I guess what you might call a spy. In any event, the Congolese group knows I'm still out here and I'm a serious threat to their violent objectives. So they are trying to kill me, capture me, or get information out of me. Who knows? Frank leaned back and reached for his pipe. I sat motionless. So that's my life, the whole sordid story, and now I guess it's time to get you back to yours. I was silent. I had the answers to my questions, but I wasn't happy. What's wrong, he asked. I'm not sure, I said as I rubbed my eyes. I think it's Jim, though. Is there any way I could talk to him? Frank leaned forward. Are you kidding? He said forcefully. You know how dangerous that would be. I know. I don't know what's wrong with me, I said softly as I clenched my fists tightly in my lap and began to shake. He looked worried as he put his pipe down, pressed his fingertips together, and stared into my eyes. You really need to contact him, don't you? He finally said under his breath. I nodded. Well, it's possible we could set something up if we were very, very cautious, he mumbled. I really hate to do it, but I'll see what I can do. Why don't we get you something to eat while I think about it? Okay, thank you, I said as we walked toward the kitchen. Madame Lisson, voulez faire le déjeuner pour la femme? He asked politely. The housekeeper motioned me to sit at the table. Oui, oui, she responded huskily. C'est rare. I sat nervously as I watched her prepare my plate, swinging her ample arms around the kitchen with the ease of a gymnast. She served me sumptuous sliced beef, seasoned potatoes, and a lavish salad. A meal fit for a queen, it appeared. Unfortunately, I was too tense to indulge myself full-heartedly as I waited anxiously for Frank to return. 45 minutes passed and I could contain myself no longer. I walked quickly to the living room and found Frank on the phone. Okay, sounds good. I've got to go. Bye, he said as he saw me and hung up. Well, Linda, I'm afraid to say we have a plan for you to actually meet up with Jim. You know how dangerous this is, correct? He asked. Yes, I know, I answered softly as a tingle of joy spread through my veins. Okay, then, he said. Tonight around 1 a.m., Joseph, a driver/bodyguard, will take you to the downtown, to the big market, the Grand Mark, where Jim will be waiting for you at the mannequin pit statue. He will be wearing a beret. The street should be empty at about that hour, and you and your contact with him must be brief all the same. You understand that, don't you? I understood, but I wasn't afraid. In fact, I was almost giddy all evening as I prepared for the meeting with Jim. I bought new clothes, curled my hair, and rehearsed a greeting in front of the mirror like a schoolgirl. At 12:30 a.m., Frank walked me to the black sedan at the front of the building and introduced me to Joseph. He was a stocky older man with the piercing eyes of a hawk. I was nauseous with anticipation as we drove quickly toward the center of the city. We stopped at a small deserted street. He stepped out of the car and opened the door for me. He then pointed and whispered in a thick accent. It is down there, don't worry. I will be near you, but you won't see me. You have 15 minutes. After that, we must leave. Do you understand? Yes, of course, I answered, as I turned and walked slowly down the narrow street. The leather soles of my new shoes tapped the cobblestones as if they were hot coals. I was terrified and thrilled at the same time. My pulse thumped like the drums of a native ritual as I turned the corner and saw the figure of a tall man illuminated by a single street light. He stood facing the gate that surrounded the statue with his back toward me. He wore an overcoat and a red plaid beret that beamed under the light like a tribal crown. I could barely breathe. Jim, I finally whispered. He turned and took several steps toward me and stopped. The streetlight was almost directly above him now, casting a shadow on his face as he looked down. He slowly raised his chin, bringing it into the light, leaving dark shadows covering his eyes, and stopped again. "Is that you?" I asked. "Yes, Linda, it's me," he said as he turned his face upward into the light and stepped toward me. "Oh my God!" I screamed as I stumbled backward and covered my mouth with my hands. "What is going on?" I finally gasped. "You mean you're Jim? All this time it's been you?" "Yes, I'm sorry, but it was just too dangerous to tell you," he said softly. "Please don't be afraid." I can't believe it! How could I have not known it was you?" "Boys change a lot after the age of 14, I guess," George said softly, as his lips trembled. When we took on our new identities, I shaved my head and wore contacts instead of glasses. When you didn't recognize me when I approached you in college, I decided it was best not to tell you who I really was. But I've loved you so, Linda. I never stopped loving you. We remained standing silently as I caught my breath and stared into his eyes. "Yes, I guess you have," I finally said. "You've been quietly taking care of me all these years. And when I left for this trip, you were angry because you wanted to protect me. Oh, George, I'm so sorry. I love you so much." His eyes were dark and intense as he approached me and cradled my head between his large hands, put his mouth on mine, and kissed me hard. He grabbed me tighter as he backed me against the cold stone wall of the alleyway and kissed me harder and harder until my teeth ruptured the inside of my lips and I tasted my own blood. Tears of joy ran down my cheeks as I shed the skin of my tempered existence, exposing the flesh of my primal desires. I was free now, free to live passionately and truthfully, free to live dangerously and joyfully. I think my father would have been proud. I had joined together the two conflicting forces within me, the work of a true diplomat, you might say. I may not have saved the world, but I had saved myself, and perhaps I thought that was the key to it all. Well, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. It's actually based on some true characters I knew while living in Brussels. So join me next time for Storytime with Kathy. Thanks a lot. Bye.